Rebel religion in the news.
All right, good Wednesday morning. You're listening to Rebel Religion in the News. Jerry O'Lennon, co-host, along with Alfredo Romero, the pastor of Rock of Life Fellowship, and Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church. The discussion still is, and I think will be for a little while longer. Charlie Kirk, assassinated a week ago. I believe a week ago today. Today's the 17th, a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And let's start right off with Bishop Hansen. Just your overall thoughts on this. In particular, if it's okay, I know I saw you attend the candlelight vigil over at DeGarmo Park Sunday night.
Yeah.
There were, I would say, around 1,000 people that were there.
I would guess so. Yeah.
About that. I know that there were some people who were conservatives who said, "Oh, there were 5,000 people there," and I think we've got to be careful. There weren't. There were 1,000. I think is a generous number, and maybe closer to 800. It's always hard when you're in a big empty field. It's like when you're in New York Central Park. It's so huge. You see a crowd there. You think, "Oh, there's hardly anybody there." There were a lot of people there, but it was a big field, so it's kind of hard to get an exact number, or close to an exact number. Anyway, and what I noticed there, Bishop, was there were a lot of young people at this event.
Charlie Kirk inspired a generation that needs an answer. I just saw a little brief podcast by Victor Davis Hanson, who talked about a delayed youth on the part, the sort of the general stages of life and coming through maybe teenager and early 20s has been extended now into the late 30s and 40s. Our kids are not learning to drive at the moment they turn 16.
I noticed that.
They're not moving out. Are they coming back, or they're waiting for college for a couple 5-10 years, and you go, what is this delay? They're not getting married in their 20s, they're getting married in their 30s or late 30s, not having kids right away if they're responsible. So something has really been put on hold in a generation, and it's not their fault because it seems to be global. I don't think it's something they devised. I'm not sure what it is the effect of, but Charlie Kirk was calling young people to life and to stop delaying it, stop pushing it off.
Yeah.
COVID did that to a lot of people.
Yeah, they did.
It stopped the world, and it kind of made it make no sense, and have you just sort of stand still and say, I don't know who I am or what I'm going to do, and I don't have to figure that out. He had energy and life and answers and a God. I mean, the first thing he went to was not my country. He went to my God, my Savior.
Yes.
And he made sure that was the core of his message. And he's a layman, We all kind of expect that to be put off on the clergy, or somebody like Billy Graham or his son. And we relegate that to the role of the professionals. But here's a guy not a professional. He had some good theological knowledge. I would quarrel with a couple of things that he said, but they're not important.
I don't believe he was ordained.
No,
he was. But I tell you one thing: I've watched hundreds of his shows and his interviews and appearances at colleges. This guy could pull out the Bible verses like almost better than any pastor I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The problem what happens is when somebody is in the public spotlight and they talk a lot, you're bound to slip up sometimes. And there may be something somewhere that he said that maybe he shouldn't have said, or was maybe, because people make mistakes when you're speaking extemporaneously and you're in a discussion. Sometimes you can say something that maybe could be taken out of context, or something that maybe you wish you hadn't said. I'm wondering if people will use that as a cudgel against him for everything he may have ever said. And I'm not thinking about anything specific. Maybe I'm speaking more about myself, because we all sometimes do or say things that we go like, I wish I could take that back.
Well, the anger that comes against him, I generally haven't seen it being put in the theological quarters, because they don't know the theology either. I did see one young man want to bring issue with him, but this is a guy of faith who's the complainer.
I saw it.
But he said, you know, this Christian nationalism troubles me. I don't see nationalism in the Bible.
I think I saw that too.
Yeah. And it was an interesting response that Charlie came back with. He said, yes, there is. And he showed all the things in the Old Testament where the nation was being built by Moses and, you know, these rules and laws to govern the people who are a nation. He says, God has concern for nations. And I'm not sure that answered the man's real question, but when he connected with them, he connected lovingly. That's one of the things that Charlie Kirk was known for. It was with verb, it was strength. He'd cut them off if they were talking nonsense, but he would cut them off in a way that said, "No, don't go there. This is the line you should take, because this is the truth." And I think the things that got people most angry at him were the things regarding like transsexual stuff, because he would just tell the biological truth. You know, there's a man or there's a woman, and you can alter this, and you can live your life any way you want to once you become an adult.
I guess maybe what I was trying to point out, maybe I didn't say it effectively, is that I think Christians need to be very careful, and I don't think they have, what I could tell, is to deify a human being.
Oh yeah.
What I was trying to say is Charlie Kirk, who spoke eloquently so many thousands of hours, at some point may have said something or came across in a way that maybe he wish he hadn't.
Well, we're not going to
but
beatify him. No.
Right. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. So
Sure.
when somebody nitpicks somebody and says, well, you know, you did say this, and I didn't like the look on your face, and you kind of put that person down, and I'm sure that's probably happened with all of us. And I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make. And maybe I get the feeling maybe, Alfredo, you don't agree with that.
Well, I've watched hundreds of hours, if not 1,000 hours, of Charlie Kirk, and I don't think I've ever disagreed with him, because he was preaching biblical truth. And now some of the media out there, if you looked at the New York Times and some of the CNN, MC, all the alphabet media, they portrayed it in a different light. They said he was a provocateur, he was a divisive political figure.
Well, Jesus was a provocateur.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a divisive figure.
Yeah, but that's the way they look at it. The unbelievers, basically, okay? But the way that the people of God looked at it, that he was a unifier. We looked at him as speaking the gospel truth to bring people to Christ, not to point out the divisiveness. But there was a young woman that was transitioning. She said she felt like a boy since she was a child. And she asked me, what do I do? I have so many people against me. And he was very calm. And it was just a lovely person. And he was so calm with her. And he said, listen, my prayer for you is surround yourself with people that are around you that love and support you, that will tell you who you are for real. And he says, my challenge to you, he said, basically is, find somebody that will help you get comfortable with how you were born. You know, how you were born. You need to settle why was I born, female, and dig deep into that rather than how you feel uncomfortable. And she goes, okay, well, thank you. It was so kind. It was so lovely. And I wanted to make another point. The people that would argue with him, like even this young man who proclaimed to be a Christian, I know lots of Christians, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, that support a lot of things that are that God is against, whether it's LGBTQ or homosexuality or abortion. I know Christians that say they support abortion. All I know is that Jesus says you're for me or against me, and God has a better plan for you than any plan we can come up with for ourselves.
I'm reading an article in the American Thinker by M.B. Matthews, and he says, you can feel it. Something has shifted. The world axis bumped. The heavens are growling. There is a disturbance in the force. and goes on to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi of Star Wars.
All wisdom there.
A lot of wisdom there. He says, when we found out when Charlie died that the black soul of the underworld is far more active than even we imagined. Do you agree with that, Bishop?
Well, I'd say, yeah, we all had a terrible awakening. Not so much that there was a guy who went out to shoot him, because that can happen. That's an aberration. but that there was even a fairly large groundswell of support for the act after the fact.
Yeah.
You know, that they were happy that the guy had managed to kill him and with one shot, and that you should say that out loud. I mean, even if you're a very hateful person, to say it out loud seems to betoken a sense that there's an acceptability of saying this, that there's going to be resonance with it, and there is, and I got to say that's gobsmacked me pretty good.
Well,
But I think that the thing that I've had to reflect on this and say, well, we've heard an awful lot of Nazis being named, you know, people being named Nazi, fascist, and there's even the organization, the Antifa. And they don't know what a fascist is. I grew up in the post-World War II era, and certainly we were still shooting Germans and Japanese in our, you know, foxholes in the front yard and all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions that came up to kids in that era was, you know, if you were alive in 1942 in Nazi Germany and you had a shot at killing Hitler, would you do it? You know, would you shoot this man, knowing what you know? Or 1939, you know, or sometime before all the horror happened. And you'd have to come to the realization, well, I probably would, you know, because that would end the war and turn the world history around. But be that as it may, you know, if we start calling people Hitler today, we're justifying killing them. And I've heard a lot of people saying, and the news commentators, you know, this is war, you know, and it's an all-out war. We got to get this done. And though they don't spell the last thing out, it would certainly justify it in a lot of people's minds. Yeah, this is desperate. This is the end.
Yeah, I've heard that.
We are going to step aside. We're speaking about the death of Charlie Kirk, big picture, with Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back to Rebel Religion, the news. We've been talking, of course, about Charlie Kirk and the really real tragedy and heartbreak of his assassination. And we were kind of ending here with some of the talk. And I know that's kind of a big discussion right now. It was the type of rhetoric that's been going on with this light of fire under this young man that he felt it was his duty to take out Charlie Kirk. And my personal opinion will be yes. I could give you quotes, Maxine Waters, we got to take to the streets. We got to get them in their homes, in the restaurants. And then quotes like Schumer, you've opened up a whirlwind with Kavanaugh. You don't know what's going to hit you. And Trump is Hitler. He must be stopped at all costs. We're going to lose democracy. We'll never have another election. He must be stopped. He's a fascist. You know, it's just that kind of talk. When you tell somebody that's unhinged that he must be stopped compared to Hitler, and then that question that you ask going around, well, if you could stop Hitler, we all know that was centered around Trump and anybody that speaks a biblical truth or conservative. So I do say, look, words are more powerful than what? A two-edged sword, sharp as a two-edged sword. Yeah. It's just that does make a difference in how people act and react.
Yeah, you can create and you can destroy with words.
Oh yes.
And there's a terrible destructive force by the way people have been talking to try to get something going, try to get some violence going.
I want to ask Bishop this question. I was only 8 years old when Martin Luther King got shot and killed. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
If there had been social media back then, I think there'd been a lot of people who would have been happy. There was a lot of, there would have been there was a lot of hatred toward King.
No, there was truly.
And I hate to even think about the kind of things that would be said online if social media existed back in 1968. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I'm not saying this for sure, I'm just asking you, is it really different today than it was 60 years ago?
Interesting, and it's interesting. I hesitate to paint political picture and color it red and blue, but at the time of the killing of the king, uh, his opposition was still largely grounded in the Democratic Party, because the Southern Dixiecrats, particularly, and had a deep foundation in the holding of slavery, the furthering of the causes against the emancipated slaves, the blacks, and they had even been a lot less supportive of the Civil Rights Act that Lyndon Baines Johnson signed into law.
In fact, in 1964 Civil Rights Act, a greater percentage of Republicans voted for the passage than a
right.
percentage of Democrats did.
Actually, I'll give you some history. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower. It was the Republicans that tried to get through the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
But what happened was the Democrats were so against it that they filibustered to try to stop it. And they did. They basically filibustered, stopped it. And then in 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson signs it. And unfortunately, it depends on your views, but he was kind of forced to sign it. And if you look up some historical quotes, he wasn't too happy about it, but he signed it. And so that's how, I'm just going to say, Democrats get credit for the Civil Rights Act, but it really wasn't. It was the Democrats.
I
don't want to go there.
I didn't mean to get into politics. I guess what I was trying to talk about was the level of hatred toward someone is not new in this world. There were
Not at all.
There were,
No.
and for people to speak out like they are against Charlie Kirk, people have done that kind of thing. People celebrated when Jesus Christ was murdered, when he was crucified. They were probably dancing in the streets, and I could imagine if they had social media back then, the kind of things they'd be saying about Jesus. Well, he had it coming, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So so is it really? Are we really different, or are we just really looking at a microcosm of people who post these things? Because when you consider there are how many 300 million people in the United States,
350.
350.
350, and there's maybe 50 or 60, maybe even 100,000 of them that are writing these things. That's still a relatively small percentage of people. Are we making too much of it?
Not when they shoot somebody.
Right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reaction online.
Oh, the aftermath celebration.
Right. The celebratory aspect of it.
I don't know. It seems to justify going further with it, and it makes people afraid. I think there at least needs to be a stronger voice than that. And I must commend the networks for firing somebody who would say that Kirk brought this on himself. I mean, that is completely out of line. That's unprofessional. That's baring your teeth and stupidly. But it comes out of that self-justification that we're at war and that all no holds are barred. And gosh, I hope that this is sobering enough to most of the nation to get us to speak, not in responsive anger, not in a eye for an eye kind of backlash. Quite the opposite. That as Kirk I think would certainly preach. We got to wake up and love each other.
Were you angry when you heard about this at first, for a little bit?
I don't know if anger would describe my feeling. I was shocked and so sad, and I thought, yeah, here it comes, but because I've been feeling that violence in the background, Butler, Pennsylvania was another instance of the guys on roofs,
And the children in schools and Catholic and parochial schools getting killed.
Being shot up through the windows.
Yeah.
There seems to be an acceleration of violence and hatred, and the sense that they're doing some courageous act, that this is somehow noble. It needs to be called what it is.
Is it right, do you think, for people to try to get people fired who express these sentiments online? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think because there needs to be a professional standard, and they've dropped all that. And Fox needs to watch its language too. The right and the left both need to cool off and let's talk to each other. Charlie Kirk was about talking to your opponent.
That's the thing that is so troubling, is he listened as much as he talked.
He did.
If you watch him, he would let people say whatever they wanted to say, and then the way we're supposed to have debates in this country, he did it exactly the way we're supposed to do it.
Right.
And it cost him his life.
He smiled all the time. He smiled because he truly cared. Now, he cared about young people. He was so influential. He started this when he was 18 years old, dropped out of college because he was just disappointed with the college experience and kind of what was going on. So he started Turning Point USA. At the age of, by 30, he had already spoken at 3 Republican conventions. And that is amazing to be used by God like that. There is definitely now a rising of young people because they haven't, like, especially the COVID age era, they don't have hope. They were disappointed. They lost proms. We even have a lot of younger people from the college, Chico State, coming into our church now, and we've even had to start a young person's Bible study led by a Chico State college student, and because they want hope. Men want to be men, and the women don't want to be told what they can do or not do with bodies and what their future should be, and shun marriage and shun love, and you can do it on your own, and you don't need people. So it's been amazing to see the young people kind of wake up, and Charlie Kirk gave them a hope, and he wanted them to think for themselves. And he said that all the time. Don't get into groupthink. Don't let people tell you who you are. You search for your identity, and he said it, and you'll find your identity in God's word.
Churches have a special responsibility right now, more than they ever have. Not since, I think, September 11th it's been so important for churches to do everything they can to be correct with the messaging. Is that a fair statement, or maybe I'm overstating it?
Oh, I think it's very fair. And, I walk on nettles. I'm not necessarily preaching to the Republican Party of prayer. I know that there's varying political opinions among my congregation, and it would be so easy to just do one of my old sermons and rail against the horrendous liberals, but I can't do that, and it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be right. And so because Charlie was a Republican and what would we call him, a right wing or conservative guy,
Conservative advocate, activist.
Activist.
Yes.
We would. I think his death comes with a warning. Don't push on this because you're proposing a political position, because he had a political position. Mm-hmm. But the things like the Sunday night rally that we had didn't talk to politics at all.
Not at all.
It was a spiritual life, and Charlie was first and foremost and last a Christian.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Amen. I agree with that. Yeah, he wasn't, and people misunderstood him. He wasn't political. He was biblical. And when you preach biblical truth, there are going to be those that disagree with you that are more political.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure we mention Bishop Peter Hansen. Thank him as always for being on our show on this Wednesday, and remind you about his church, St. Augustine Anglican Church in downtown Chico, over on Salem Street, across from Mom's Restaurant. It's a perfect place to go to church because right after you get done after the benediction, you go right across the street and get a nice breakfast. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bishop, for being with us.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Take good care, and so long.